Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here at my next Star Wars Rebels episode reviews. This one's going to be for Season 4, Episode 12 and 13, Wolves and a Door and A World Between Worlds. Interesting episodes, very, very interesting episodes in terms of what they introduce and the kind of concepts that the World Between Worlds actually is. But I think together, both of the episodes were almost like overly focused on this. Like, it's just about this thing. And while there are some interesting things that happen in the episode, it's so focused on like building up to what the portal does. And then once we get in there, that you kind of come out of both of the episodes kind of feeling like, okay, like what actually happened in this episode? There was obviously a theme of, oh, here is a place where I can alter the past and change that, and you obviously are addressing the fact that Kanan has just been killed, and here's a clear way to actually save him from that fate. But do you actually go ahead with it, or was that Kanan's moment to go? That I think was a very interesting topic to approach. The Ahsoka thing, I think ultimately is probably the big takeaway from both episodes, in that, oh, this is how she survives. Now, whether or not they go on to explain it later on that this was always how it happened, that Ahsoka in the first place, back when we actually saw it happen, survived the duel with Vader because Ezra always did this, or not, that's obviously where the debate is going to be kind of, I think, forever about until they reveal it. But I did enjoy that in terms of like, okay, so that explains things of like how she got out of that kind of crazy situation. And they explained that the bird is a bird that Ahsoka's known for a while. It's kind of saved her life before, so it's keeping Ahsoka in play, in that they obviously suggest pretty heavily that she survives whatever goes on and will somehow make her way back to the group at some point. That seems to be what we get out of their interactions, and that they have to split up to when the Emperor finds them, which results in Ahsoka kind of going back to her timeline, but after, I suppose, Vader has had to leave, so she kind of ends up surviving that, I think. And I assume she's then going to pick up where, like, whatever, like a year or two takes place, which is obviously the difference between when she last saw Ezra versus where he is now. And she'll come back, and she'll be older, but she will have memories of obviously the experience in the World Between Worlds. I don't really even know if they're going to use Ahsoka in the finale. I think they have to, just because the way they did the time travel, it gives Ahsoka a chance to, I suppose, set up some things for the finale, and maybe give her a complete send-off in the finale, in that obviously we're expecting they are going to have to find some way to take Ezra out of the picture as well in the finale, as well as Ahsoka, if they kind of reintroduce her in the same way. Because I suppose what this episode did do also was it sort of made Ezra a sort of notable character to the Emperor, in that here is someone who was able to get into this kind of portal within the Jedi Temple, access this area, save someone, which is obviously, if the Emperor had access to this location, the things that he would be able to do would basically make the Empire impossible to defeat. As for, I suppose, the nature of this in the first place, this World Between World, this kind of central area kind of within the universe where you can alter kind of space and time, seems to be it. The place itself alters space and time, so hence why Ezra was able to look through one of the portals and see something that just happened a day or two ago, but also at the same time look at something that happened a couple of years ago. And then in the audio, when he first got in there, he was able to hear stuff being said by Yoda, Obi-Wan, I think Rey and Kylo were also in there as well, stuff that they would say in the future. Obviously he was completely unaware of the nature of this place until he got a kind of a better understanding of it later on after the Ahsoka situation. But still, the results seem to be that Ezra managed to completely seal this thing, and that the whole Jedi Temple in Lothal is now completely sealed up, and no one's going to be allowed to get back into it, in that it feels like it's taken out of the picture for now as a kind of plot point. This really, really dangerous thing that the Empire got their hands on is now sealed away for good. The other interesting thing I found was that the visual, I suppose, aspects of this, using the Mortis, the trio of Mortis characters, the father, son, and daughter in this, in that they never appeared within the episode, but they kind of made it pretty clear that they're seen as somewhat like Force gods, basically. In that the early Jedi history involves kind of to some degree worship of these three, and that explains why such a powerful portal relates to their powers, and that the son has the ability to close the portal, the daughter has the ability to open it, and then the father is, I suppose, to control, I think is basically the way they explained it. And Ezra, through focusing the Force on a specific one of the figures, was able to do specific things. So in the first instance, he opened the portal, later on he closed it, and it was like the power of the father that I suppose allowed all of it to happen in the first place. They never really went into it more than that, in terms of overly trying to explain that, like, Ahsoka actually sort of has a connection to the daughter, in that the reason she's alive is kind of technically because the daughter gave up some of her life force to Ahsoka. Maybe now that explains why Ahsoka has a connection to the bird, the owl, which seemed to be suggested to be like a kind of familiar, or the daughter in like a kind of spirit projection type form that was able to help people. But they didn't delve into it as much as I suspected. It was more of just using the legendary nature of those three characters within the overall universe as a way to say, like, oh, here is something that sort of matches their power levels, where they were basically established to be the representation of the light and dark side of the Force, and then the father was kind of meant to represent balance. And here is like this place where you can alter space and time, you can time travel basically, and you can obviously you travel through space, in terms of like he walked through a portal to get to this kind of unknown area, which was otherwise only able to be accessed by like Palpatine using kind of Sith magic, which was interesting. Also establishing, I suppose, just how powerful he is, that one kind of incantation from him was able to more or less max out like Ahsoka's power level in defense. But yeah, as I said, it's an interesting episode in that they don't go enough into the technicalities of what happens with the World Between Worlds, and then there's otherwise not enough of a plot to really kind of get into what's happening. Like the whole, what's his name, like Minister Hylan or whatever his name was, the Empire guy who seems to have an understanding of the Jedi and the Sith, and was kind of Palpatine's kind of right-hand man on this mission to investigate the Jedi Temple. He obviously was interesting in that he obviously seemed to know what was going on. His interaction with Sabine was interesting enough in terms of like forcing her, and then eventually the two kind of having to work together to actually figure out how this works, because Sabine wants to get Ezra out, but she doesn't want to give away the information to the Empire, but she kind of has to just give Ezra the opportunity at all to get out. So that ends up paying off in the end when she's aware that the sun is the way to close the portal, and Ezra focusing his power on that. But yeah, as I said at the start, the main takeaways are that they kind of explain how Ahsoka survives her duel with Darth Vader here, which seems to be kind of crazy time travel stuff, and that I do suspect we will see her again. Otherwise, there's no real point to her appearance here of like, oh, she was saved from that only to be sent back and killed again. The point where like Ezra says, find a way to meet up with me again, just as Ahsoka has to leave back into the portal to escape from Palpatine, I think is a pretty notable thing that it will come back. And then, other than that, I think the takeaway is just that I think further kind of to the whole Ghost crew kind of confirming that Kanan is kind of truly gone, that there was a sense of his spirit kind of lingering there with them through the wolf doom to kind of guide them to this point, but that the wolf leaving at the end is like Kanan's spirit, I suppose, fully passing on. And I think Ahsoka even alludes to it, like he's become one with the cosmic force, which I thought was a cool reference, in that they don't really talk about that stuff all that much, the whole like living force, cosmic force situation. But that seemed to be the confirmation at the end that Ezra, in making the decision with the help of Ahsoka to not interfere in Kanan's kind of sacrifice moment, in part, of course, because his situation was different to hers. Her fight was a one-on-one with Darth Vader, and she had kind of already forced him into a kind of retreat situation. Ezra taking her out of that situation just saved her. It didn't like leave anyone else to die. And then she goes back into play when I suppose it's safer. Whereas if he had taken Kanan out of that situation, no one would be there to block the blast, and it would have basically resulted in like Ezra, Hera, everyone dying just to save Kanan. So Ahsoka kind of revealing that like that was his moment. It's kind of a lesson that I suppose he has to learn. And I'm sort of wondering, is Ezra going to have that moment? Is he going to realize a point in the finale where this has to be my moment to sacrifice myself for everyone else, or what? Because he is the main character, and it feels like they can't end the series with him still alive unless they do something crazy. So they almost have to kill him off, and how do they do that? Because he is still a fairly young character. So lots of interesting things to think about going into the last 3 episodes. How excited am I? Obviously, we're going to see Thrawn return. We're going to see some sort of a showdown on Lothal, because the Empire are in a bad situation, and it feels like there's now an opening to a degree to save Lothal. But I think we're at the point now where, okay, is the finale of this show just saving Lothal? And this is like the first big victory for the rebellion, but all the key Empire people get away, and it's just like there's hope now, and the remaining people going forward, Luke, I suppose, hinting towards Luke, they'll be the one to finish the rebellion. I'm thinking that sort of has to be how they kind of bring it to a conclusion. I hope they don't kill off Thrawn. That'd be, I think, a waste of the character, just because he hasn't had the big moments we sort of expected. So I don't know. I don't really know what to expect from the last few episodes beyond just a, big rebels versus like Thrawn Empire type fight. But we'll have to wait and see, of course. But yeah, that's been my thoughts on these 2 episodes. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on them. What were your thoughts on such a interesting kind of device in the World Between Worlds being introduced, and how they executed it? But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.